All right, diving in today. You guys really wanted to hear more about Lance Armstrong and sent over this episode focusing on his early life and career. Man, what a story, huh?
Definitely a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to use what we learned and try to really dig into his rise in the cycling world, that competitive fire that always seemed to push him forward,
Right.
and maybe see if we can uncover some early signs of those controversies that would come to define his legacy later on.
Fire is a good word for it.
Yeah.
The episode really does make him seem almost obsessed with winning, even as a kid.
It all starts with his childhood in Plano, Texas, right? There's even this story about his very first BMX race.
Oh, yeah, remember that?
Falls off his bike, starts crying, and his stepdad, Terry, basically tells him to toughen up. I mean, it really struck me how that one moment might have set the stage for his entire life. What do you think?
Yeah, experiences like that can definitely shape a person. Almost forces you to see the world in black and white, winner or loser. And, it makes you think about how those early influences, especially someone like a stepdad, can affect your whole approach to competition, maybe even to life itself.
Totally. And you see that drive play out in his early success as a triathlete. That's where he meets his first real mentor, Jim Hoy.
Hoy must have seen Armstrong's potential right away, even gave him money each month to support his training.
$400 a month. And remember, this is way before the huge sponsorship deals and all that.
Right.
But then there's this incident at a criterium race. I don't know if everyone knows, but criteriums are those short races, multiple laps, usually on a closed course.
Often in the cities, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, Hoy tells Armstrong specifically not to win, probably to avoid attracting too much attention, I guess.
Makes sense.
But Armstrong, well, he can't resist the pull of victory, right? Ignores Hoy's instructions and takes first place.
That's fascinating. It's not just youthful ambition, is it?
Mm-hmm.
That's a deliberate decision to put winning above everything else, even above the trust of his mentor.
Yeah.
Really makes you think about some of the tough choices he'd make later down the line.
Absolutely. And speaking of mentors, we then meet Eddie Borisovich, this legendary cycling coach. They meet at, get this, a Texas barbecue joint. Can you imagine?
Sounds about right.
So Borisovich lays out the dream of professional cycling for Armstrong, even compares him to Greg LeMond, the first American to win the Tour de France, remember? Fame, fortune, the whole package.
Borisovich could definitely spot talent. I mean, he obviously saw something special in Armstrong, that ambition, the raw talent. But even then, there are hints of concern, right? About Armstrong's ego, his single-mindedness. Almost sets the stage for their conflicts later on.
Yeah, for sure. So Armstrong jumps headfirst into the pro cycling world. But his first Tour de France in '93, it's a reality check. Finishes way down in the standings and realizes he's got a long way to go.
Yeah, I bet that was humbling.
Fast forward to '95, he's facing another setback, this time in Italy. And the episode really focuses on his frustration, the pressure to perform.
A lot riding on his shoulders by then, I'm sure.
Totally. There's this tense moment on the team bus where Armstrong basically tells his teammates they need to start using EPO to stay competitive. He even says that infamous line, "Everyone's doing it."
Whoa, that's a huge turning point, isn't it?
Mm.
It's not just about him giving in to performance-enhancing drugs. It's him justifying it, saying it's a necessary evil in a sport where everyone's already cheating.
It brings up so many uncomfortable questions about the culture of cycling at the time, the pressure to win at any cost, and it sets us up for the next major turning point in Armstrong's story.
Which is
Yeah.
his cancer diagnosis in '96.
Yeah.
The episode really gets into the details, too. The spread to his lungs and brain, the doctor giving him a really grim prognosis. It's such a stark contrast to all that relentless ambition we saw before.
Right. It really makes you stop and think how fragile life can be, even for someone like him at the peak of physical fitness.
Yes.
And what really struck me is how the episode describes Armstrong being forced to admit he'd been using EPO.
Oh, right, to his doctor.
Yeah, because of the type of treatment he needed.
Great, right.
It's such a powerful moment, full of tension. You can almost feel the weight of that secret, that fear of what revealing it could mean for his career.
It just shows you the kind of double life so many athletes were living back then, the lengths they'd go to, the potential consequences of the truth coming out.
The episode then jumps ahead to '99. Armstrong's back at the Tour de France after battling cancer. I mean, it's incredible. The source material talks about all the excitement surrounding his comeback, the media frenzy.
I bet.
And of course, he goes on to win his first Tour de France. That victory cemented his image as this global icon, a symbol of resilience, hope.
It's almost like something out of Shakespeare. the fall, and then this incredible rise, even greater than before. But it's also the start of the most controversial chapter in his career, right?
Yeah.
All the speculation, suspicion, and eventually that undeniable proof of his doping.
This particular podcast episode only focuses on those early years, but you can see the seeds of his downfall even then. That constant tension between his incredible talent and his ambition. The willingness to push those boundaries, both physically and ethically.
It really stood out to me how Armstrong's story isn't just about one man's ambition. It says something about the whole culture of professional cycling back then. The episode even touches on doping being this open secret, almost like something you had to do to compete.
It makes you wonder, how could that go on for so long? Where does the responsibility lie? With the individual athletes or?
That's the tricky part. On the one hand, you've got athletes making choices driven by ambition, pressure. But then you've got the governing bodies, the teams, the sponsors. Maybe they were turning a blind eye for years. Who knows?
It's like everyone was in on it, caught up in this idea of winning no matter what.
It really makes you think, you know. Sports are supposed to be about fair play, pushing limits within the rules. But Armstrong's story throws all that into question. It's like ambition, when it goes unchecked, can lead to some pretty dark places.
We touched on this earlier, the influence of mentors. The episode highlights the impact of Armstrong's stepdad, that harsh win-at-all-costs mentality. You have to wonder how much those early experiences shaped his worldview, his approach to competition.
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely there. And it brings up those questions about the pressure we put on young people in competitive environments. Even if this deep dive is about Armstrong, it makes you think bigger.
I remember reading that one of his early coaches, not Hoy, someone else, told him to ride his bike into a tree during training, just to toughen him up. It shows you how intense it was, that win-at-all-costs mentality all around him.
Wow, that's pretty disturbing, isn't it? Makes you think about how we, as a society, can nurture talent in a healthy way, encourage that love of sports without taking it too far.
It's all about finding that balance, encouraging ambition, but also instilling those values of sportsmanship, integrity.
Exactly. And I think this deep dive shows why those conversations are so important. Because in the end, Armstrong's story is a reminder that winning isn't everything. It should never come at the cost of our values, of other people.
Well said. True success is about more than just what you achieve. It's about character, integrity, having meaningful relationships. Wrapping up this deep dive on those early years of Lance Armstrong, I have this lingering sense of tragedy, you know? The guy had incredible talent, drive, determination, but it's all overshadowed by that relentless pursuit of victory, no matter the cost.
I get that. It's hard not to feel disappointed, maybe even sad. But there are valuable lessons there. It challenges us to think about our own definition of success, what we're willing to sacrifice.
I like that. Before we finish, I'm curious, what stands out most to you from this look at Armstrong's early life?
It's how this early part of his life almost foreshadows everything that came after. The drive, ambition, bending the rules, it's all there right from the start. Almost like a blueprint for his later wins and his eventual downfall.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like all the ingredients were there from the beginning. But the recipe was still being written. And as we all know, the final product left a pretty bitter taste.
That complexity, that mix of triumph and tragedy, is what makes his story so captivating. Even the most celebrated people are still human. They have flaws, vulnerabilities.
You said it. We have to look beyond the headlines, try to understand the forces that shape us, for better or for worse.
Exactly.
What a great takeaway. It reminds us that we're all works in progress. We're always evolving, learning. Armstrong's story might be a cautionary tale, but it also reminds us we have the power to choose our path, define success on our own terms.
And that's a message worth remembering, whether you're into cycling or not.
Yeah.
It's also interesting how much the episode focuses on the personal cost of all of this, you know, how Armstrong was willing to push away friends, colleagues, even people who were really close to him, all to protect that secret and maintain his image.
Yeah, it's that the more he wins, the higher the stakes get, the fewer people he can actually trust. Almost a vicious cycle, you know what I mean?
It's got that Greek tragedy vibe almost. The hero, brought down by their own fatal flaw. And for Armstrong, that seems to be this unwavering need for victory, no matter who gets hurt along the way.
Yeah, and in the end, what does he have? Trophies. Money. But at what cost? I think what we've learned here is that real success is so much more than just external validation.
Yeah.
It's about living with integrity, surrounding yourself with good people. Those will support you, challenge you in healthy ways.
I couldn't agree more. It's the journey, right? Not just the destination. It's about building those real connections.
Yeah.
The kind that can handle the pressure, the secrets.
As we wrap up our look at these early years of Lance Armstrong, I gotta ask, what's the one question you're left with? What's gonna stick with you after we're done here?
I keep coming back to this idea of legacy. How will he be remembered? A champion,
Mm.
an inspiration, or a fraud who betrayed everyone?
That's a tough one. It's so nuanced, full of contradictions. He did incredible things, I mean, physically with his cancer advocacy, but it's all tainted, right? By how he got there.
It makes you think about how we define success. Do the ends ever justify the means? It's something to consider, not just in sports, but in life.
Well, this deep dive has been quite a ride. Ambition, drive, that complex mix of talent, determination, and ethics. More questions than answers, that's for sure. But that's what makes it so interesting. This is a story that'll stick with me, and I hope it encourages our listeners to keep exploring, thinking about the human experience.
I agree. It's a great reminder that even the simplest stories often have hidden depth, and that's what keeps things interesting.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope you'll tune in again next time as we continue to explore, learn new things, one fascinating story at a time.